It's a money fight, I get you, and you want to make money. But at some point in time, if you keep telling us that you're taking boxing seriously and you want to be recognized as a big-time boxer / fighter, you're going to have to fight somebody closer to your age, who is a contender at the very least.
Jake Paul fight announcement, another circus act, another clown show. A fight between Jake Paul and Gervonta Tank Davis has been announced as an exhibition fight.
The fight that I couldn't believe, that was too insane and honestly just baffling to think would be a real fight in 2025, reminds you that combat sports are the craziest sports on the planet.
Jake Paul versus Gervonta Tank Davis, a circus or a statement? Boxing has always been full of surprises, but this latest announcement left even seasoned fans shaking their heads.
I've always been a fan of Jake because I think that what Jake tries to do for the sport of boxing, I think people don't realize the importance of him being able to promote for himself and not being reliant on the promoters who I believe has held the sport hostage. The only critique I've ever given Jake, I just want Jake to fight boxers. Like Nate Diaz, we know his reputation. We know the man can fight. We know in the octagon he could be something special. But we know you breathe on him, he starts bleeding.
It's a fair critique. And you know what? He should fight boxers, but then again, should he? Because I'll tell you why. If you're a human who can rake in $6 to $10 million fighting people that you know you're going to beat, and you want to build a resume and a record that's impressive with a good highlight reel, you got to be strategic about this shit. Jake's 25, 26. He's got so much time.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, I get where you coming from. All I'm saying is, we don't know your skill set because you haven't been in there with anybody really skilled.
Jake Paul, the YouTuber turned boxer, is set to face Gervonta Tank Davis in an exhibition fight this November at State Farm Arena in Atlanta, streaming live on Netflix.
Performance. Jake Paul won the fight. But yeah, that was that. This time, Jake Paul is to take on Tank Davis. Tank Davis, he was recently in the news for being arrested for a domestic violence incident involving one of his kids' mother. He was alleged to have slapped her about the place. The charges were later dropped, to be fair to him. But yeah, that was when he was last in the news. What is interesting is just a couple of months ago, Tank Davis was saying openly that he'd lost his passion for boxing and that he wanted time away from the sport. There was speculation that he might even retire, as he was experiencing extreme mental fatigue from boxing, depression, and there were mental health concerns over him. However, I guess the opportunity to earn a truck full of money, fighting a completely worthless exhibition fight against Jake Paul, was enough to make him change his mind about boxing. Funny that, isn't it? But you know what? I'm not even going to waste your time or mine critiquing this utter nonsense. Suffice to say that this so-called fight we're talking about is an exhibition, and it pits Jake Paul, who is a cruiserweight, by the way, weighs in excess of 200 pounds, and Tank Davis, who is, he was the WBA lightweight champion, who weighs in at about 135 pounds when he fights. So that's a disparity of some 65 pounds. In old money, that's about 4.5 stone. There's also a significant difference in height. Jake Paul is roughly 6'1", 2. Gervonta Davis is 5'5" at best. So, there's a height disparity there of some 8 inches.
On paper, the matchup makes little sense. Jake Paul is a cruiserweight, weighing in at over 200 pounds, while Tank Davis has built his career at lightweight, around 135 pounds. That's a difference of more than 60 pounds, along with a height gap of about 8 inches. For traditional boxing fans, this looks less like a fair fight and more like a sideshow. Critics have been quick to label it a circus act, pointing out that Paul's career has largely been built on unusual matchups rather than competitive balance. His opponents often fall into one of 3 categories: much smaller fighters, veterans past their prime, or athletes from outside of boxing altogether. While the fights generate buzz, they rarely settle questions about Paul's actual skill level in the ring. Still, you can't deny what Paul has done for the sport.
If it makes dollars, it makes sense. And we've seen that Jake will kind of bounce in between doing these entertainment fights and then, trying to push toward his goal of ingraining himself in the sport of boxing, and kind of does both of them. So it's kind of a weird place to be, because he wants the respect of the boxing fans and the boxing hierarchy and hardcore boxing people. But at the same time, he'll gain some of that and then lose some of it. It's like a seesaw of his fights. Like one fight and be like, okay, that's a real fight, or that's a real fight. And he'll go and he'll win the fight. Julio Cesar Chavez, real fighter, maybe past his prime, whatever. But Jake goes and wins that fight pretty easily, and then gets a lot of respect, gets a lot of the boxing hardcore love. And you have these talks about him fighting Anthony Joshua, and that was going to get even more respect. More people were like, that's fucking crazy. What are you doing? Myself included. That seemed like a massive risk, but a lot of people were like, okay, fair play. Anthony Joshua, that's a real heavyweight. Jake wants to fight him. He's a psycho, but fair play. And then you announce this one, and it's like, well, that's the same thing people have been saying about Jake for years. So it's a weird spot to be in for him, for sure. But I talked about this not being the first choice, and I don't think it was, because Coppinger reports next that talks for Jake Paul to face Anthony Joshua collapsed over network issues. Now, we had all heard the talks, and they were pretty public, from Eddie Hearn, from Jake. Nakisa Badarian, Jake's manager, was over in the UK on, I think, Sky Sports, talking about the fight and saying how it was a real possibility and they were really starting to work on it. And now Mike Coppinger says that the talks for Jake and Joshua fell apart over broadcasting issues.
He's managed to cut out promoters, fund his own events, and bring younger audiences into boxing, something the sport desperately needs. He's turned his social media following into real business power, earning millions per fight and forcing boxing onto mainstream platforms like Netflix. Tank Davis's involvement adds another layer of intrigue. Just months ago, Davis admitted to being burned out, even hinting at retirement due to mental fatigue. Yet the lure of a massive payday against Paul was enough to pull him back. For Davis, it's a chance to cash in on his name without putting his championship reputation on the line. For Paul, it's another opportunity to command headlines and keep his boxing experiment alive. At times, he's chased legitimate respect, teasing fights against real contenders like Anthony Joshua. But when that matchup fell apart due to network issues, he pivoted back to entertainment.
That I gave too much credit to Paul. Why? He's done a hell of a job to put himself in this position. He sold himself. He sold his dream. He took his dream. He took his idea. He put it out there, and he made it happen. Give him credit for that. And he made it happen. And he took risk along the way. Yeah, he picked his spots. He's in the driver's seat. He gets to pick his spots. He's the one bringing the money. He's the one promoting. Yeah, he's the name. He made himself that, coming from where he came from, with all his followers and the whole thing, and just the uniqueness of what he was doing. But he has learned along the way. He's not a top guy yet. No, I don't know that he ever will be. He didn't have that amateur background and the things that you usually need to be a top guy. But he has improved. He is a work in progress. He is a guy that you got to give him credit that he's respected the sport. He went out there, he's worked hard at it, and he's gotten himself into this position. Having said all of that, this might be a step too far. Now, when I say it, I'm also, I try to be responsible. I've been in this game 50 years, so I know where not to step, where you could twist an ankle, or worse, you could break a leg or fall down. When I say that with the understanding, too, that Joshua's coming off being knocked out.